Martell Holt and Melody Cherie. Three names that have become permanently tied together in a narrative that refuses to end quietly. A story that started as a love triangle has now evolved into a battlefield of accusations, counter-accusations, emotional breakdowns, and shifting public opinion. And just when everyone thought the dust had finally settled, Arionne stepped forward and broke her silence in a way that shook the entire fandom. What we once believed was a simple tale of a cheating husband, a loyal wife, and a villainous other woman has now cracked open into something far more complicated. Because now we're being asked to reconsider everything. Who controlled the story? Who benefited from the narrative? And who suffered silently while the world pointed fingers? This isn't just gossip anymore. This is about power, image, survival, and the cost of living your pain in public. For years, fans thought they understood the situation perfectly. Martell Holt was seen as the charming, ambitious husband who lost control. Melody Cherie was the strong, successful wife who was betrayed. And Arionne Curry was labeled the woman who destroyed a family. It was a clean, easy story, a story people could digest without questioning too deeply. Reality television made it look simple. Interviews supported it. Social Discover More media echoed it. And the audience accepted it. But real life is never that simple. Behind the cameras, behind the confessionals, behind the carefully chosen words and polished appearances, there were cracks forming long before anyone noticed. According to insiders, the marriage was not built on harmony, but on tension. Not on partnership, but on competition. Not on communication, but on emotional distance that kept growing wider with every argument that was never truly resolved. Yet the public image remained flawless. A power couple, a brand, a symbol of success. And Arionne was never part of that picture, except as the villain. For years, Arionne Curry lived inside a box the public built for her. A box labeled homewrecker. A box filled with judgment, insults, and assumptions. Her name became a punchline. Her pain became entertainment. Her humanity was forgotten. She watched people discuss her life as if she were a character, not a woman with feelings, struggles, and consequences to face every single day. And finally, she broke. When Arionne spoke, it wasn't polished, it wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't strategic. It was raw. She described years of humiliation, years of being blamed for everything, while feeling like her side of the story was never allowed to exist. She insisted she was not innocent, but she was also not the monster people made her out to be. According to her, Melody was not the angel the public believed, and the narrative, she said, was incomplete, misleading, and unfair. Her words didn't just spark conversation, they ignited war. Suddenly, people began to question whether the story they believed was only one side of a much larger truth. Just when Arionne's statements had the internet spinning, Martell Holt stepped forward in a late-night live stream that flipped everything upside down. His tone was serious, his words were calculated, and his message was clear. The marriage did not fall apart the way people think it did. Martell claimed Melody hid key details about their relationship. He described long-term emotional manipulation, constant criticism, and a pattern of behavior that made him feel diminished rather than supported. He suggested that Melody had emotional connections with other men, not necessarily physical, but deep enough to blur boundaries and create resentment. According to Martell, the marriage was not destroyed by one mistake. It was destroyed by years of unresolved tension, ambition, and emotional distance that had grown quietly for years. And suddenly, fans were forced to confront an uncomfortable idea. What if both sides were wrong? What if there were no heroes in this story? Screenshots began circulating. Messages were analyzed. Old interviews were replayed. Fans became investigators, trying to piece together a puzzle that kept changing shape. Every word was examined, every pause was questioned, every facial expression was interpreted. Reality TV bloggers jumped in, social media commentators built theories, armchair psychologists tried to diagnose emotional patterns. What was once entertainment became obsession, and Arionne found herself once again in the center, but this time not just as the villain, but as a symbol of how easily narratives can destroy a person when they are only allowed to exist in fragments. As Martell continued speaking, the story grew heavier. He alleged that Melody's pursuit of fame and validation created a toxic environment at home. He described arguments that never ended, criticism that never softened, and emotional walls that kept rising higher. Insiders claimed Melody carefully curated her public image, while private resentment simmered behind closed doors. They suggested that the marriage wasn't just failing, it was suffocating. At the same time, Arionne's role was re-examined. Some began to see her not as a manipulator, but as a woman who entered a situation she could never control, and then paid the price publicly for choices that were far more complicated than headlines. The narrative shifted from blame to complexity. Then came the alleged recordings involving Melody and her children, clips that some viewers described as harsh, others insisted they were taken out of context. Some claimed they were manipulated, some believed they were completely fabricated. And once again, the debate wasn't about what was true, it was about what people wanted to believe. Because in this saga, perception has become more powerful than reality. Legal experts began warning about defamation, invasion of privacy, and potential custody implications. Commentators speculated about financial fallout and reputational damage. This was no longer just reality TV drama. This was real life with real consequences. And yet, the audience couldn't look away. What started as simple outrage slowly turned into complicated empathy. People realized that every person in this triangle was emotionally damaged in different ways. Every person was defending their version of survival. Every person was protecting their image, their pride, and their future. Arionne wanted her truth acknowledged. Martell wanted his perspective validated. Melody wanted her reputation protected. And the audience wanted clarity. However, enter Arionne Curry, now 45, finally stepping out of the shadows after years of silence, judgment, and public ridicule. And just when fans believed Martell Holt had finally closed the chapter on messy love triangles, he returned with a brand new plot twist that shook timelines, ignited hashtags, and left viewers whispering, "Oh no, not again." And Melody Cherie, she remains right in the center of a storm that refuses to pass quietly. Was Arionne really the villain all along? Or was she simply the woman brave enough to speak up after years of being labeled the bad guy in a story she never fully controlled? And Martell's new relationship? Is it really a fresh start or just another spark thrown into a fire that never went out? Because what we are witnessing is not just gossip. This is a front row seat to a real-life saga of love, betrayal, ambition, image, and survival in a world that refuses to look away. For years, the narrative was simple, clean, and emotionally satisfying. Martell Holt was the charismatic yet flawed husband. Melody Cherie was the devoted wife who was blindsided by betrayal. And Arionne Curry was the other woman who destroyed everything. It was a clean, easy story, a story people could digest without questioning too deeply. Reality television made it look simple. Interviews supported it. Social Discover More media echoed it. And the audience accepted it. But real life is never that simple. Behind the cameras, behind the confessionals, behind the carefully chosen words and polished appearances, there were cracks forming long before anyone noticed. According to insiders, the marriage was not built on harmony, but on tension, not on partnership, but on competition, not on communication, but on emotional distance that kept growing wider with every argument that was never truly resolved. Yet the public image remained flawless, a power couple, a brand, a symbol of success, and Arionne was never part of that picture, except as the villain. For years, Arionne Curry lived inside a box the public built for her, a box labeled homewrecker, a box filled with judgment, insults, and assumptions. Her name became a punchline, her pain became entertainment, her humanity was forgotten. She watched people discuss her life as if she were a character, not a woman with feelings, struggles, and consequences to face every single day. And finally, she broke. When Arionne spoke, it wasn't polished, it wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't strategic.